International Forum for Promoting Homeopathy. Welcome our chief guest, Dr. Rajendran MD and PhD in homeopathy. It was information for me sometimes seeing a PhD in homeopathy also, and we are very glad to celebrate today with our honorable guest, Dr. E S Rajendran. And I request Dr. E S Rajendran to take the forum from now.
It's indeed my pleasure to be with all of you today. And I'm again sorry for the technical glitches which happened in the beginning. So, as we started in the beginning, we are in the middle of a crisis which we are slowly, the humanity is slowly overcoming. And as a medical field, as a medical system, homeopathy has a great offer which was not perfectly utilized during this pandemic. So I would like to come to the point primarily that there is a misconception in the field of medicine as well as in the field of homeopathy that there is no scientific basis for homeopathy, or there is no research happened in homeopathy. There is not enough evidence to the action of homeopathic medicine. These concepts were, I could say, reasonable till 2000, 20 years back. But lot of things happened in the last 20 years, which in our education system as well as in the public awareness is lacking regarding to the advancement which happened in homeopathy as well as in the medical field in the last 20 years. There is a general say in the field that medical textbooks are always 20 years behind the actual level of scientific advancement, because all the basic scientific advancements are fundamentally coming in latest journals and latest scientific publications, which come to a textbook order after 20 years or 15 years. And in homeopathy, it is really true, because we are still in the mindset of 20 years behind, and that is immensely harming the development of homeopathy around the world. So that is the reason why I would like to show you some of the important research publications in the last 10 to 15 years. These are only few. I am showing around 23 important research publication, which I want all the delegates, every student of homeopathy has to read. Most of these papers, research papers, are published in peer-reviewed international journals, and they are of high value, and majority of them are freely available, and you can download these papers. Spend some time, kindly download these papers, and you can read these papers leisurely so that we understand lot of research happened in the field of homeopathy in the last 15 to 20 years. So I have published 9 papers on the nanotechnology related work on my homeopathic drugs. And there are many other researchers also published electron microscopic analysis of homeopathic drugs. And all of them have published their research findings in reputed international journals, which we missed for a long time. Parallelly, my work was basically on fundamental research of homeopathy, which was more focused on the content of homeopathic drugs. Whereas the great researchers like Professor Kudabaksh, Professor Kutanand, Professor Sunila, Professor Preeti, Professor Bellavite, Professor Marsotto, all of them have done immense work in the field of molecular biology as well as in the field of genetics. So what I'm trying to do today, I'm showing the papers, important papers, which I suggest everybody should read in, download and read these papers, around more than 10 papers of importance, basically important papers on immunogenetics modulation as well as gene regulation, gene regulatory mechanisms which has shown with the homeopathic ultra high dilutions in multitude of clinical conditions are given here. I'm just sharing my limited knowledge in this area to all of you, for everybody to kindly look into this and read these things. So we have enough research papers published. There are more than 100 research papers already published regarding the genetic modulatory capacities of homeopathic medicines, as well as genomic changes which happens with homeopathic potencies in 30, 200, 6, etc. And these are important because you can just see some of the papers here. Marsotto and paper, the number 10, you can just have a look at it. It was published by Bellavita and Marsotto. Extreme sensitivity of gene expression in human SY55 neurocyte to ultra low dilute doses of Gelsemium sempervirens. Potentized, ninth one you can see, potentized homeopathic drug Arsenicum album 30C positively modulates protein biomarkers and gene expression in Saccharomyces cerevisiae exposed to arsenate. And all these papers are fundamentally explain how the homeopathic dilutions act in the organic being as well as in human beings. So my last 10 years of work focused on fundamental study of homeopathic ultra high dilutions, where I did my studies mostly in two laboratories. One is the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, as well as Nanotechnology Laboratory of MG University, Kottayam. And in these studies, this is a TEM grid where we are analyzing a transmission electron microscopic samples are set in this small middle thing which you are seeing here, which is hardly few millimeters in diameter. And in that, we are having 250 micron size columns made up of carbon platform and copper wires. And this is a platform in which we are experimenting our homeopathic ultra high dilutions in the transmission electron microscope. And in these studies, the outcome which many of you have seen earlier. So I just wanted to, this is the laboratory of MG University where I worked years together. And this is the field emission scanning electron microscope, which you can see in the right side. And this is a laboratory of Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, where I was fortunate to work for many years intermittently. And as well as many of the researchers who helped me in this work are in front of the laboratory. So where I did my work as nanoparticle characterization. And this is a research during 2011 to 20 led to the discovery of nanoparticles in ultra high dilutions of homeopathic medicines in 6C to CM scale, 6C, 30C, 200, 1M, 10M, 50M, and CM potencies, as well as LM1, LM6, LM12, LM18, LM24, and LM30 in 50 millismol scales. And here, one thing conclusively we could say or prove that homeopathy is never ever a placebo. It is never ever a remedy which is invisible. It was invisible for us long years because we didn't have enough electron microscopes or advanced electron microscopy to analyze the homeopathic dilutions and their contents. So it was a scientific issue. It was not related to the presence or absence of particle in homeopathic dilutions. So I did continuously more than 30 homeopathic drugs in multiple dilutions, in multiple sources from metals, minerals, plants, imponderables, nosodes, etc. And in all the samples, undoubtedly I could find the presence of nanoscale material of the original drug. And that is something which was very evident in the studies which happened in the last few years. And as we know that, we have three scales of preparation in homeopathy. That is, one is decimal scale, another is centesimal scale, and the 50 millismol scale. Whatever is the potency, The core factor of controversy related to homeopathy in the field of medicine as well as in the field of science is the concept of potentization. Because potentization, people believe, conventional science believe potentization leads to nothing. It lands up in a 0 point. From there onwards, there will not be any presence of particles. And this is according to the conventional thought we were forced to believe. But that is something which I was experimenting for the last many years, and which is supported by the latest science of nanotechnology, nanoscience, and the latest electron microscopy, as well as the latest advanced spectroscopic methods to analyze the content of the drug and their elementary composition. So here we come to the point of a nanoscience. There I have used systematically 3 different equipments for my study. One is a high resolution transmission electron microscope with the X-ray spectroscopy, that is energy dispersive spectroscopy, and field emission scanning electron microscope with energy dispersive spectroscopy, and dynamic light scattering technique also extensively used in the study of homeopathic ultra high dilutions. Why I am telling these basics before going to the details as part of my speech? These basics are very important to understand the science which we are in. So this is my latest paper related to this, that is homeopathy seen as personalized nanomedicine, published in journal Homeopathy in 2020 January. And there are many other papers which are published related to research work and evaluation of Avogadro's number in the light of HRTM and DDS studies of high dilution of ferrometallicum, 50 M potencies. And in this paper, I have emphatically mentioned that Avogadro's number is not valid to evaluate homeopathic dilutions or homeopathic potencies. So Avogadro's number, which is a principle based on the linearity of science, is a hypothesis, and that hypothesis seems to be a relevant and important basis of chemistry. But when it comes to observations under the electron microscope, Avogadro's number is invalid to evaluate the validity of homeopathic ultra high dilutions. And another important paper which you can freely download is in the Saudi Journal of Medical and Pharmacological Sciences, Nanopharmacological Aspect of Homeopathic Drugs, Comparative Study of Different Dilutions of Natrum muriaticum 62 cm and LM1 to LM30. This is a very, very interesting paper. I request everybody to download and read this paper. Then there are many more papers which are published, which I am just showing here. And many of you must be having this work, Nanodynamics, which is a comprehensive explanation and exposition of my work for the last 10 years. It was published in 2015, and this book is going to be edited and coming a second edition soon. And this is a German translation and German edition of Nanodynamics, released in 2018. And this is one of my latest work, which covers the philosophy of medicine, the science, religion, spirituality, art and literature, with integrating with the genetic evolution. How the genes are influencing each and every characteristic of human activity, whether it is science or philosophy or art and literature, everywhere we will find the influence of genes, even in health and disease. And that is what this book is about. I just want to introduce it. And this is a nucleus which is on chronic diseases and miasms. These are the translations in Russian as well as in Turkish language. And this is the New Lights, which was my first book published related to the homeopathic literature in 2001. So these pictures some of you might have seen earlier, but still I will just go through it briefly to refresh the idea. This first drug I am going to show you is the HRTM analysis of aurum metallicum. Aurum metallicum is pure gold, and the aurum metallicum is primarily triturated in homeopathic dilution, and after a level of trituration we convert them into succussion force that is into alcohol solution, and we prepare the dilutions. And this is a 6th C dilution of aurum metallicum. And in the 6th C, you can see the resolution of electron microscopy: 100 nanometer, 50 nanometer resolution, 10 nanometer, and 2 nanometer resolution. When you come to the 2 nanometer resolution, you can watch that there are lines appearing. And these lines are the atomic arrangement of nanoparticles of gold. And that is very interesting. But 6C is not a high dilution. It is 1 by 10 to the power of 12. That is the value of 6C. But when we come to 30C dilution, again different resolutions are shown here. And here we can see the size of particle have come down to 3 nanometer to 366 nanometer. 3 nanometer is so small. 1 nanometer is 10 angstrom. That is 10 hydrogen atoms together give us 1 nanometer. Like that, this is 3 nanometer. Gold particles which are of 3 nanometer size to 366 nanometer. Sizes are mentioned in this second potency, 30 potency of aurum metallicum. And the images of aurum metallicum 200C, we can see plenty of particles and different shapes and sizes are attained. And in the 10 nanometer resolution, right corner lower, you can see that there are black and flickering spots in that small area. And these are basically individual atoms. And these resolutions are very, very unique, where the metals will, you can find out the nanoparticles of the original drug material in this dilution. So when we come to 1M potency, you could see there is a change from 30 to 200 to 1M. 200, you could see the particle are arranged in a fern leaf-like structure in the 500 nanometer resolution. When we come to 1M potency of the sample, you will find these fern leaves are getting exactly a natural shape. And we have different resolutions here: 500, 100, 20, and 10 nanometer resolution with enough number of particles, and particle size is 5 to 50 nanometer measured, and less than 10 nanometer size is generally being considered as a quantum dot size. Because semiconductor materials of less than 10 nanometer is officially termed as quantum dots, and other metals and other materials, nowadays people use the common terminology quantum dots. And these quantum dots are very peculiar. Less than 10 nanometer size particles are very peculiar because this particle less than 10 nanometer has unlimited ability to penetrate into every chamber of human body. It may be crossing the blood-brain barrier, or it may be crossing the cytoplasm, into the cell nucleus, and into DNA. It is very easy and simple for particles of this dimension. And when you come to aurum metallicum 50M again, we are seeing enough number of particles of gold, and the smaller particles are always being less than 10 nanometer in size. And the CM potency of aurum metallicum, again you can see that there are different sizes and different shapes of the nanoparticles with 7 nanometer to 100 nanometer in size. And this is unique. And this I have experienced in multiples of drugs. And this study I did twice in 2 different electron microscopes in 2 different laboratories to confirm whether this result is having anything wrong. And I used 2 different microscopes, a high resolution transmission electron microscope. Later I used a field emission scanning electron microscope. And in these 2 electron microscopes, I could clearly see the particles of gold in all high dilutions of the drug. And this is the percentage of elements. Here you will find an array of members of particles, but this is something which you should know about it. That's why I will slightly explain this chart about it, because in this table There is a weight percentage of on the left side and the elements I have given on the top. This is a elementary composition of aurum metallicum 6C2Cm. Here aurum is consistently present in all dilutions, and you will see copper also consistently present. Why copper is coming? I told you in the beginning, in the TEM grid, we are using a TEM grid composed of carbon with the copper wires. So copper wires get exposed to the electron microscopic, the rays, and these rays, when you pass the electron through these nanoparticles, this area is so small and it gets exposed to the wires of copper also. So copper naturally come in the study. I could have deleted it, but I didn't do that because I didn't need any corrections in the values. Whatever value comes, exactly I use the values as it is. So those who know the electron microscopy, they understand why it is kept like that. Otherwise, people get confused. They will say that there are multiple elements are coming. Definitely, copper is justifiable, indium is justifiable, hafnium is justifiable, boron is justifiable, carbon is justifiable. Other elements, we have to find an answer. Maybe due to impurities or maybe due to any other reasons which we are not aware today. So this is the graph shows the presence of gold in the different weight percentage of aurum in the aurum metallicum 6C2Cm potency. And here the size of nanoparticles also you can see that 0.3 nanometer to 25 nanometer in the smallest size, and the largest ones up to 458 nanometer size. And that must be an aggregation of multitude of particles. One more drug I will just demonstrate, that is Hypericum perforatum. It is a plant medicine, and this is studied in field emission scanning electron microscope. And here we can find this is a different texture and different shape and different size. And these are the particles of Hypericum perforatum 6C potency under field emission scanning electron microscope. And when you come to 30C potency, you will find the same drug sample in 30C potency. These are the different sizes and shapes of nanoparticles of Hypericum perforatum. And this is the presence of particles in Hypericum 200C. And in the 1MC, again you will find plenty of nanoparticles, single particles as well as particles in aggregates. Nanoscale particles usually come closer easily. When we sonicate them under a sonicator by using ultrasound, these particles will get segregated. But within a very short time, these particles again will come closer and together. So this is the 50 M potency of Hypericum. And this is the CM potency of Hypericum. And in all the potencies of Hypericum, we are finding the presence of nanoscale materials. And the presence of particles in every plant medicines and organic medicines are fundamentally composed of carbon and oxygen. That is repeatedly verified in all my papers. You can see that whether it is a lycopodium or it is a carbovegetabilis or sorinum, Hypericum, pulsatilla, naxomica, every drug we are finding the unity of carbon and oxygen as the fundamental unit of the nanomaterials created because they are organic materials. And this is the size of nanoparticles of Hypericum 6C. And this is the analysis of alcohol control sample, TEM image of alcohol 30 potentized, and there is no particles at all, as well as FSM images of plain alcohol which is used for potentization. There was no particle at all. This is one slide I am showing because of the current relevance of the situation. The study I did in 2015 or 16, this is the TEM image of Arsenicum album 200. Because Arsenicum album created a huge controversy in our country because of Ayush Ministry suggested arsenicum is a good drug to prevent the COVID virus, or arsenic is being commonly used as medicine in homeopathy for very many variety of viral infections. So Ayush Ministry suggested, and the question started coming that there is nothing in arsenic in homeopathy in 30 dilution. But I'm showing 200 dilution, which I have studied years before. And you can see the original arsenic nanoparticles of 5.08 nanometer to 71.09 nanometer size. And you know the size of COVID virus. The size of COVID virus is, the diameter of COVID virus is around 100 to 130 nanometer. So the arsenic which we are giving to a COVID patient or a person without COVID infection or a viral infection, the size of nanoparticles we are introducing into the human body is much, much smaller than the size of the virus itself. The subtlety of homeopathy is clearly visible here. And it can work in different ways. It can stimulate the immune system. We don't know, sometimes it can maybe directly, it may influence the virus also. We have to study about it. So this study come to the conclusion that there are nanoscale materials of aurum in every potency of aurum metallic. And there are nanoscale materials in every potency of hypericum perforate. And similar is the outcome in all the drugs I have studied. That is the reason why recently I published my paper in Homeopathy, British Homeopathic Journal. Homeopathy is seen as personalized nanomedicine. Why I put personalized nanomedicine? We are coming to that point. So my dear doctors, we all know that the biological systems are operating in nanoscale. Whether it is a DNA or an RNA or hormones, enzymes, receptors at the cells, antigens, antibodies, everything functions in a nanometer scale. Less than 100 nanometers is the size and shape of all these things. So this is something important we need to know when we are going to understand the medical world in a different view. This takes us to the genetic basis of biological existence. Genetic basis of biological existence is DNA coding. There is no doubt about that. Everybody knows that DNA coding is the basis of growth, development, and termination of life. When a single zygote is formed in the uterus of mother, by receiving an ovum and a sperm, we know that the transfer of genetic material happens and a single cell created. And in this single cell, we have around 28 to 30,000 genes. And these 30,000 genes are the deciding factors of the development of the fetus in the uterus to make him as a human being and to grow him as an adult and to terminate his life at the end. So the DNA, which is the basis of our existence, we need to know something very clearly. I'm going to explain slightly more about it. This DNA coding is the basis of the development of tissues, organs, systems, muscles, skin, brain, heart, everything. And they are grown out of pluripotent stem cells, and gene regulation control this development. This part is very, very important because these 30,000 genes are same, exactly same in all the 100 trillion cells in our body. When a baby is growing in the uterus, we know that in the first week, second week, there are hundreds, then thousands, then 100,000s, then millions of cells are formed. And all these cells are having same nucleus and the same DNA inside. 30,000 genes are common. Then how we develop a different multiple organs in our body? It is very simple. Every cell which is designated to become an organ, a system, has specific genes activated. The remaining genes remaining inactivate, or they are switched off condition. If a cell is growing to become heart, only the genes essential, necessary to build up heart in the anatomical form as well as the functional form are switched on. The remaining genes in that DNA or in the cell nucleus is switched off. And this switched off mechanism and switched on mechanism creates a cell to become the brain system, the cardiac system, the kidneys, the liver, the skin, the bones, the uterus, anything and everything. So in our body, which is having 80 to 100 trillion cells, even today we are having same set of genes in our body. There's no difference. Same set of 30,000 genes. In that, when the eye started developing in the 4th or 5th week of intrauterine life, there are specific genes, specific cells are activated with the specific genes switched on, which create eyeballs, retina, and everything related to the eye. Why I am telling this in detail? We are coming to the scientific part of medical world, and there it is important. That's the reason why I am explaining this area a little bit elaborate. And this process is what we are called gene regulatory mechanism, or otherwise we call it as regulation of gene expression, the regulation of gene expression, or the gene regulation. Gene regulation is the basis on which our complete mental and physical systems are built up. So my dear friends, when gene regulation from a single cell evolve into a whole human being, view the biological existence from DNA rather than seeing from the gross organs is the more scientific approach. But unfortunately, for the last 100 years, the knowledge about the DNA, the knowledge about the genetics was very, very poor. The first DNA was discovered in 1953 by Watson and Crick. Before that, no medical man, no scientist in the world had any idea about what is the DNA, what is the gene. That is the reason why when antibiotics was discovered in 1929, it was a great celebration. Now it is not a great celebration. And the gross organism is rather advanced. Hence, the current mechanistic model of conventional biomolecular medicine is an outdated model, simply because it never integrated the DNA or genetics into treatment strategies. It is an academic interest. Whenever a disease comes, whenever the question of medication comes, this DNA, the gene regulation, immunogenetic modulations, protein synthesis, these questions are not at all there. Treatment is always based on at the level of body fluids, at the level of serum, at the level of extracellular fluid, maximum to the intracellular fluid. Beyond that, nothing is there in conventional modern medicine. This is an absolute failure, and it is on the edge of collapse. Why I am confidently saying this? As I told you, we have 80 to 100 trillion cells in our body, and every cell we have a DNA which is coiled and put inside the nucleus is around 2 meters long. In a single cell, we have a DNA of nearly 2 meters, more than our height. And this DNA double helix structure, if you take this DNA from all the cells in our body and stretch them, you will find that it is much more longer than the diameter of solar system. The solar system is 9.3 billion kilometers. But in a single human body, if we take this DNA from the cells and stretch together, we will find it is nearly 18.18 billion kilometers, more than double the diameter of solar system. Such is the complexity of a human being. And that is never being explained, that is never being explored, and that is never being considered when you treat a human being. And among the DNA structure, when you look at it, we have only 2% is the coding part. Adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine. Pairing part is only 2%. There is methylation part, there is acetone part, there are many other areas. Histones are there, and these are all proteins, and 98% of the DNA is non-coding, and it is unknown to us. We should be realistic about what we know about ourselves. Our knowledge about ourselves, our own single cell, is only 2%. If we claim bigger, practically it is less than that. So my dear friends, this is the genetic basis of our survival. This is the genetic basis of our existence. So there comes the value of epigenetics and nanopharmacology. The epigenetics and nanopharmacology are the two areas in which basically homeopathy is built on, even though we were not aware of that. Epigenetics and nanopharmacology. The epigenetics are well explained in the papers which I have shown you with the Dr. Kudabaksh and other internationally recognized researchers in molecular biology and genetics. They did wonderful work, but we have never recognized, we have never read them, we never understood. We are happy to say that Hahnemann's organon is the final. Hahnemann's organon was the basis, but science grows beyond that. And if we don't agree that, profession will never grow. It will remain always in the backyard. So this is epigenetics and nanopharmacology of homeopathy. And this gene expression is a highly sophisticated program of the gene expression, and which increases or decreases the production of specific gene product or called proteins. This is the basis of health and disease. So we find two things clearly. Homeopathic drugs, homeopathic ultra-high dilutions produces epigenetic modification and gene regulation. And other end we found every homeopathic ultra-high dilutions contains plenty of nanoscale materials of the original drug. When you connect these two things together, we get a clear scientific answer. And these nanoparticles are capable of gene regulation and epigenetic modification. This is the reason why I put homeopathy as highly advanced therapeutic method compared to any existing system of medicine. Every homeopath in the world have experience in results, rare results, extraordinary results. It may not be common at every time, but sometimes you get results which you can't even believe. Why it is happening? There must be a science. And that science is what we are inquiring into. And that science is what we are looking for. And that science is what we wanted to make a generalized science for medicine. Instead of an occasional hit, we want to make it as a daily event for the patients for their cure and improvement of diseases. And here one thing I just wanted to say that the signs and symptoms of drug proving, what we are doing in homeopathy, we are proving a drug in a healthy human being. When we prove a drug in healthy human being, we find there are signs and symptoms. Anybody who did this proving clearly know that there are signs and symptoms produced during the drug proving. I personally proved drug. I have proved drug with the PG, UG students and volunteers repeatedly, and I have recorded them, and I know this happens. And this was a fascination, and this was a great wonder for me years before. I was wondering how it is happening. My God, it's something very unusual, because when we gave a drug to almost 30 students, around 20 of them developed a peculiar type of mild abdominal colic at the same time of the day. Initially, I was wonderstruck, but later we come to know that these symptoms which are commonly occurring in these volunteers have a basis. And what is the basis? These homeopathic drugs containing this nanoscale material, such a subtle material, they produces epigenetic modification in a transient phase. and that produces signs and symptoms. Why it is important? The Marasoto's paper I have shown you of Gelsemium sempervirens. In their study, they found Gelsemium downregulates 56 genes and Gelsemium upregulates 6 genes. So when you give the Gelsemium for proving, it acts on the same genes and it upregulates and downregulates some of the genes. And when the same genes are having the causative factor for a disease, maybe a migraine or maybe a vertigo or a viral fever, any of these sets of genes are getting involved. There, Gelsemium is the drug because it produces similar signs and symptoms. So Hahnemann's discovery of the concept of similia similibus curanda is absolutely justifiable based on our recent knowledge in genetics and nanopharmacology. And these slides are, I have taken with the kind permission of Professor Khudabakhsh. He was kind enough to provide me these slides. And these are the studies he did and parameters he did. It's a published paper, copied from a published paper. The signaling pathway, cell cycle analysis, cytogenetical parameters, and histology and immunofluorescence. In that, what we are seeing, the results are the red color which is shown in the signaling pathways are down-regulated genes. And the left you can see the lower side up-regulated genes. And the cell cycle analysis is found is the mice which is fed with CKL-core30, they had many of the parameters normal, but they were not treated with CKL-core, the parameters were elevated. And regarding the cytogenetical parameters, the reduction in the genotoxicity and DNA damage in the cells of CKL-core30 fed mice. And histology and immunofluorescence, skin papilloma showed reduction in the size of papilloma and reduced expression of the proteins in CKL-core30 fed mice. That means the gene regulation was regulated by CKL-core30 in the experimental animals. So what he says, this is Dr. Khudabakhsh's statement, by preventing or blocking cell proliferation, by leading uncontrolled cells into apoptotic, that means programmed cell death or senescence, easily aging of the cells, pathways by modification of signaling cascade. So in orthodox chemotherapeutic drugs, that means conventional modern medicine chemotherapeutic drugs, generally combat by causing direct DNA damage and thereby cell death. Every chemotherapeutic agent produces cell damage, DNA damage, and cell death. Whereas ultra diluted homeopathic remedies appear to adopt molecular pathways by causing modifications in signaling cascades through interaction with the DNA, presumably by epigenetic modification. So whenever you treat a patient of cancer, migraine, gastric ulcer, cardiac problems, liver cirrhosis, psoriasis, any disease, we are operating in a different level. We are not operating in a superficial level where there is a ointment is applied, where there is a steroid ointment is applied, an antibiotic ointment is applied. It's not the way. When you prescribe a dose of sulfur or a nitramur or heparsulf or arnica or bryonia, it produces changes in a deeper level. In the epigenetic modifications is the basis of the homeopathy to act. So this is the picture of the experiments which Professor Khudabakhsh conducted. And the mice you can see here, first one is the normal one. Here it is a chemical induced skin papilloma, skin cancer. And the external morphology showing development of skin cancer and modulating effect of CKL-core30 and versus placebo. The picture one A is a normal animal. Picture B, carcinogen treated. Picture C, succused alcohol, that is placebo. There is no difference between B and C. Whereas D and D, you will find carcinoma treated with CKL-core30. The healing happened. This is an animal experiment, not a human experiment, definitely. And these type of plenty of experiments happened in animal model, in different models, in vitro models, and everywhere there is a definite answer that homeopathic ultra high dilutions produces epigenetic modifications. Why the community of doctors, why the community of scientists, why the community of even homeopaths are unwilling to understand it is something, a mystery for me. And I'm really baffled to see that why such an important discoveries which can change the whole concept of medical world is still remaining under carpet. Not even the people bothered and concerned about human health are not aware of it. So this is Kondrago 30 induces epigenetic modification of lung cancer specific tumor suppressor genes via demethylation. Methylation is a process in DNA where the methyl radicals are added, and demethylation is the removal of methyl radicals, and which produces switching on mechanism and switch off mechanism of genes. So these are some of the important research papers which every homeopathic doctor has to read, and every lover of homeopathy must read. And if you read that, we get a totally new vision and view about what is medical world, not only about homeopathy, what is going on in the world will be clear for us. So homeopathy can be safely called as nanopharmacology. The reason is these studies, part of studies I have taken from nanotechnology, not from my studies alone. So nanoparticles of smaller size, they have an advantage of volume surface area ratio. More and more electrons are exposed to the external environment. So their potency of action, mechanical capabilities, and their chemical activities, and their catalytic power, everything will be manifold, million times more than the crude material. And they act entirely different. And also these nanoparticles can act like, it act on DNA, RNA, hormones, enzymes, receptors, antigens, antibodies, etc. And they can freely pass through the nuclear wall and directly enter into the cell nucleus and produces genetic modifications. And they can produce gene regulation. And that is the beauty of Hahnemann's intuition, because he understood that if a material, when you give to a healthy person, if it produces signs and symptoms, and if you find similar signs and symptoms in a diseased individual, a patient, you can prescribe the medicine based on the principle of similarity. And here the principle of similarity is not the superficial headache or thirsty or thirstlessness. This leads us, take us to the specific genes where the disease originated. It's a wonderful, unbelievably superior perception of Dr. Hahnemann. Even though he didn't know about genes, he didn't know about heredity in that level, he didn't know about DNA, nothing. But his perception was such a sophisticated one where he could understand that this similar effect can cure the diseases. Now we understand that this is because the same drug which act on same genes. You know that we have polycrush medicines, lycopodium, natramur, phosphorus, and almost every metal drugs. They act multiple locations, multiple diseases. They cure a lot of diseases. Why? They modify multiple genes, not one or two. Lycopodium can modify maybe more than 300 genes. So diseases related to these 300 genes can be treated well with lycopodium. That is the reason why when we take a totality and prescribe a single medicine, we cure a headache, a skin disease, a gastritis, a sneezing, an allergic problem, everything together we may cure. We all experience that. Why we are curing? We are curing because when you give Apis mellifica or Natrum muriaticum or Natrum sulfuricum, these drugs have capability of modifying at least 100, 200, 300 genes at the same moment. That is the reason single drug therapy in homeopathy is still very effective. And we are curing patients with a single medicine many a time. So Hahnemann's contribution in this area is definitely going to grow in the years to come. Because the insight which Hahnemann created by his deep insight into the experiments he did through is extraordinary. So why these issues are coming? Because there are different methods of treatment, there are different ways of treatment, there are different philosophy for treatment. And today's world, conventional medicine is having the upper hand in treating diseases and defining science and doing research and finalizing the deal at any point regarding health. And here, it should be appreciated as a great research happened in the field of modern medicine in the last 100 years, especially after Second World War. And it has saved millions of lives throughout the world. Everybody got benefited at some point of time. And it is a perfect life-saving approach in accident emergency conditions, which cannot be replaced in most of the time. But conventional modern medicine terribly failed as a model in the treatment of chronic diseases. They don't even claim a single allergic disease have been cured with conventional medicine. Single diabetes is cured with diabetes, conventional medicine. Or a hypertension is treated and cured with a few weeks of treatment, never. So why? The reason is conventional treatment is more based on the genetic basis of existence and the biological clock, which controls the human life, human health, and human diseases are never ever incorporated into the core philosophy of conventional medicine. And that is the reason why conventional practices are only palliative in all chronic diseases, never curative. And it was effective in acute diseases for a long time, but with the failure of antibiotics in the recent years, that area also receding for conventional medicine. And it is a very, very critical situation going to evolve in the world where an alternative methodology, an alternative source, an alternative philosophy of science is in dire need. And I personally believe homeopathy as a nanopharmacology and homeopathy as a medicine which produces gene regulation is the best option for the world to depend on. But we need to do immense research and perfection in the art of treatment that is yet to come. So the basis of conventional medicine, if we look like that, we understand that till 1910 in USA, whether it is homeopathy or naturopathy or conventional allopathy, everything was same. There was no difference. There were equal number of teaching institutions for homeopathy, allopathy, eclectic medicine, osteopathy, naturopathy, and everything. But 1910, based on the report of Abraham Flexner, the Abraham Flexner Commission was instituted by two corporates. One was Carnegie Foundation and another was Rockefeller Foundation. You know, the two biggest capitalists in America in the beginning of last century, they funded Abraham Flexner to study about the situation of health in America and health education in America. And Abraham Flexner traveled around America and Canada for 5 years, starting from 1905 to 1910, and gave his report to the government. And this report is the basis of today's conventional medicine. It is not a report of any doctor or a scientific committee. It was the report of a single graduate from Johns Hopkins, a young economic graduate from Johns Hopkins University created this report. And based on that report, even today, the conventional medicine stands. And he demanded the objectivity and predictability, and also he demanded immense support for vaccination as a method of treatment, and the systems of medicine which are not collectively coming together with these concepts, he suggested should not be promoted by the government of USA or Canada. So by 20 years time, by 1930, majority of the teaching institutions in America and Canada were closed down, and either closed down or being converted into conventional methods. And in that process, we should understand some important things happened. The discovery of bacteriology and followed by the discovery of antibiotics in 1928. And when the discovery of antibiotics happened, the World War II was in the beginning phase. In the World War I, Majority of soldiers died because of wound infection. But in the World War II, nobody died of wound infection only because of single medicine, that is penicillin. And this gave immense credibility and value for antibiotics and the concept of treatment based on bacteria and virus. And this helped the conventional medicine to grow into the unlimited scales. And it helped the humanity to some extent, but the pitfalls were waiting. Now we are in the pitfalls of conventional antibacterial concept or anti-germ concept of conventional medicine. So my dear friends, how we failed in this? Conventional treatment failed in the treatment of chronic diseases. They did immense research. Billions and billions of dollars have been spent for the research in the every diseases. So many pathways and mechanisms were identified, but treatment were never successful. No proper cure has been found for any of the chronic diseases. And here, the problem was, as I told you, antibiotics discovered in 1928-29, DNA was discovered in 1953, and the gene decoding happened in 2000. So there is a gap of 80 years. And these 80 years, modern medicine has grown to such an extent with all the philosophy. Now, when the genes have come up into the field, in the last 20 years, we have unlimited knowledge accumulating into the field of gene regulation and the number of genes, each gene's the coding, and how the genes are activated. To some extent, we know everything. And now we realize with this knowledge, the treatment of conventional treatment for all the chronic diseases are outdated. It is not justifiable for the future. So what happened is, the treatment was completely like antibiotic became anti-diabetic, anti-hypertensive, anti-tumor, anti-allergic, everything was an anti-drug. Even today, we are in the same level of thinking that we are trying to find new and better antibiotics and antiviral agents. 100% we are not going to have it, and we are going to fail. And here, the nanoscale medicine agents, they don't act anti-hypertensive, anti-diabetic. And senior most doctors, I can see the faces here. They have cured hundreds of cases of allergies, hundreds of cases of hypertension, hundreds of cases of diabetes. Not anti-diabetic prescribed, not anti-tumor prescribed, not anti-allergic or anti-diabetic or anti-hypertensive prescribed. You prescribe constitutional medicines. And constitutional medicines made gene regulatory modifications. And it cured the patient. Whereas a patient on anti-diabetic or anti-hypertensive will never remain as a patient of diabetes and hypertension. So the nanopharmacology is the best option, or homeopathy is the best option for the future, provided it needs refinement. It needs more deep, in-depth studies. So where we stand actually, our existential reality is, look at the human evolution for the last 10,000 years. The Egyptian civilization had a well-developed medical system during that time. Actually, the Greek civilization has adopted many practices from the Egyptian civilization in their clinical practice. So Greeks practiced medicine, Romans practiced medicine, Indians practiced medicine far advanced, Chinese practiced their own medicine far advanced. The world had always multiple methods of treatment for the last 10,000 years. But now people say that there is only need of one system of medicine. And that's not going to cure a single person also. It's really a funny argument, and people don't even understand why it is. So the progress of knowledge is from gross matter to the subtle matter. That is from the gross matter of physics from Aristotle to the Newtonian laws after 2000 years later in 15th, 16th century. Again, after 400 years later, Einstein has taken us from the philosophy of gross matter of Newton to the philosophy of matter-energy duality. Now we know that matter and energy are interchangeable. So this is basically the changes happened in physics. The matter became matter and energy, and when the physics changes, every other science has to follow. That is what happens in the human history. So the science of medicine has to follow the footsteps of physics. Physics has moved from the reality of matter to the reality of energy, the reality of matter energy duality, whereas medicine is still not willing to change. This is not a scientific issue. This is basically an economical issue. It is basically an issue based on decision making at top levels, which are not scientific at all. So the biological existence of human beings are defined currently by Cartesian mechanistic model. That is the basis of conventional medicine. Cartesian philosophy taught in 16th century, Descartes told that human being is a unity of organs. So the treatment can be focused on organs. If the organs are functioning normally, each and every organ and tissue is functioning normal, the person is normal. If one organ is dysfunctional, make it all right, so the whole organism is okay. And further he said that the mind and body are two different entities. You don't need to focus on mind to treat the body, or you can rectify the errors of human body or the organs by itself. He didn't know about genetics, he didn't know about pluripotent cells, and he didn't know about gene regulation in the development. So we are not saying that what Descartes told is bad or good. It's not the issue. Issue is it taken us to a different high level of advancement, but at the same time, it has taken us to a level of a stage where we are unable to progress even little more again. And our health industry is completely stagnated because it stands on Cartesian mechanistic model. It is a materialistic model where the mind is least important. For a homeopath, if a patient is coming with any disease, if you find a specific mental symptom, that is very relevant to give a prescription. Whereas for a conventional doctor, a patient is with a cardiac problem or a nephrological problem coming with a specific mental symptom, that mental symptom is the problem of a psychiatrist, not the problem of the cardiologist or nephrologist who is treating. So this makes the concept of holism and the concept of segregation of mind and body as an important issue to be taken care in the future. So in natural diseases, in every natural diseases, the inquiry should start from the genetic level. We are usually doing, a diabetic patient is being investigated the blood sugar level. We investigate the blood sugar level and we go for HbA1c level, C-reactive protein, whatever it is. And we are looking at the changes which happens at biochemical level, at the fluid level, and we are treating the patient to rectify the blood sugar levels by giving insulin or whatever drugs we are giving. But not a single diabetes is originating from the defect in the blood sugar level. It originates from the protein synthesis at the DNA level, at the genetic level, where a homeopath can peep there, whereas a conventional doctor has no device, no spectacles to look there. We have invisible spectacles in our hand because we learned the science like that. So the DNA coding is the basis of growth, health, disease, as well as the termination of life. So what I'm trying to say is, the present research findings prove beyond doubt that homeopathic potentization retains nanoparticles in the dilutions, far beyond Avogadro's number. So we have a problem that we are in disagreement with some of the basic principles of chemistry. If we remain subservient to this concept of chemistry, then we remain like what we are yesterday and today. And when we say that, we have evidence. I'm not hypothesizing anything here. We are talking on clear evidence. Avogadro's number is not an experimental outcome. It was a hypothesis built by Avogadro in 1810. And Avogadro's number was first coined by Millikan in 1912. American physicist Millikan in 1912. So these are hypotheses, thinking linearity of the world. That means when you divide a 1 gram material, it becomes half gram, then it becomes quarter gram, then it reduces and finally becomes 0. This is the basis of linearity in science. But when you go to subatomic level, atomic level, nanoscale level, linearity is never applicable. Only thing applicable is it is unpredictable. You don't know whether it is a particle or an energy level or it is a photon or a wave. This is the level our human body is operated. Look at the DNA, look at the cell. In a single cell in the nucleus, we have 2 meters of DNA coiled and we have 30,000 genes. And these 30,000 genes are composed of 3 billion pairs of basic letters of adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, 3 billion pairs. And every gene has this much of information. And this information is the cause of disease. Where anything happens to the DNA protein synthesis, we find it become a diabetes, it become a hypertension, it become a nerve disorder, and it gives a multitude of diseases in the human body. And which is being treated with anti-diabetic, anti-hypertensive, anti-allergic, and people take the drugs lifelong and later land up with the complication. This is a definitely unscientific approach to a serious problem of human existence. So homeopathy is a personalized therapy. Why I am saying it is a personalized therapy? Because for the same disease, we prescribe different medicines for different patients. Conventional medicine is a statistical medicine. You take the average statistics of the blood count or the blood parameters or the biochemical values and you treat to clear the values into the statistical averages. And the same medicine is prescribed for every human being in this world, irrespective of their genetic variation. And that is completely an unscientific methodology, unjustifiable methodology. Emergency situation, life-saving attitudes are different. And that cannot be applied for a person for a day-to-day life with a normal, healthy disease condition originating from natural diseases. So homeopathy is truly a personalized nanomedicine. Why I'm insisting on that is, we look at every individual separately, their individual characteristics are analyzed, their mental, physical characteristics are associated with their clinical diagnosis. So we look at 3-4 parameters every time. We look at the uncommon symptoms in a patient, both in mind and body. We look at the miasmatic background of the patient. Miasm is absolutely a genetic predominance. And we look at the clinical diagnosis, which is a final pathology of a patient. And when we look at all these things together, and when we form a permutation and combination of all these different data together, we come to a single homeopathic drug, and that drug produces cure in the patient. And how it is happening? Because homeopathic individualization is a way to sketch the genetic blueprint. Why I am saying this? Every individual has a different liking, different disliking, different physical stature, different mental stature, different cravings, different aversions, different pattern of sleep, different pattern of eating, different pattern of behavior. This is because of they have difference in their genes. And when we study these uncommon things in a patient, you are studying the uncommon factors in their genes. And there you prescribe a medicine. So what a homeopathy is unknowingly doing in a detailed case analysis is sketching the genetic blueprint of an individual. You go back and see your case reports and see a Crohn's disease in a patient, 5 patients of Crohn's disease you have treated. The possibility of giving same medicine for all the patients is practically nil. Maybe 1 or 2 drugs may come additionally, but normally it won't come same drug for all the patients. Rarely, very rarely it may happen, but commonly it never happens. So every expression has its roots in DNA. Our behavior, our physical stature, our mental stature, our pathological findings. The root cause lies with the DNA. DNA modification, gene regulation. So that is why epigenetics and health are closely integrated. And here I am giving few examples to highlight what I said. We say bacterial infection is because of bacteria. Bacteria come and invade the body. But we have an immune system which is very efficient and effective to counter the organism. But sometimes it fails. How it fails? Mycobacterial tuberculosis, when it enters the body, try to work on histone in immune cells. Histones are the DNA is covered with histones, and that act as a switch on switch off mechanism of the DNA in the specific genes. And here, what this bacteria does, Mycobacterium tuberculosis work on histone in immune cells and turn off IL-12B gene and to prevent the immune system to act against the bacteria. This organism is capable of switching off your immune system in a gene. Similarly, in viral infections, we know that every virus acts and play with our immune system. It hides against the immune system. It go and attack the immune system. It switch off and switch on the immune genes to make it possible for it to invade our body. And even in COVID-19 virus is capable of initiating a cytokine storm, uncontrolled production of the chemicals, mediators, which produces immunity. And this helps to compromise the immune system. And it helps the virus to grow and multiply. And in cancers, the gene BRCA1 gene expression is downregulated by increasing DNA methylation. DNA methylation will be increased in a specific gene BRCA1, and this leads to breast cancer. This methylation gets increased in SCPT9 gene in the case of colorectal cancers. For every disease, whether it is a viral infection or a bacterial infection or anything which happens in our body, if our body fails, our immune reaction fails because somebody has played with our gene regulation. Bacteria, virus, all microorganisms are capable of doing that. But our immune system is robust, so it prevents. It never allows them to come inside and play the havoc. But why we are failing badly in the current scenario? We should think about it. We are failing badly because, number one reason, the world around, last 80, 90 years, every human being has taken medicines which are immunosuppressive. You take antibiotic, you take any steroid, and majority of the drugs. All these drugs are producing, it never allows the immunity to express. When we take an antibiotic for a bacterial infection, we kill the bacteria directly and we bypass the immune system. Every time we bypass the immune system, our immune system will get weaker and weaker. When it goes for 1 generation, 2 generation, 3 generation, the herd immunity of human population will be terribly reduced. And that produces a very dangerous scenario. Nobody will be able to help us. So instead of killing the organism, we should focus on immunity of human beings. The day we start focusing on immunity of human beings, I can assure that there is only one system available to treat such immune expression improvement, that is homeopathy. I have repeatedly verified it in multiple diseases by examining the immune status of the patients. Wherever homeopathic drugs are given, every time immune status gets increased. Whereas conventional treatment, every time you take, a mild reduction of immune status will be the outcome of the treatment. And after years together, after decades together, after a century, after 2-3 generations, the immune status of human beings, which is built on a million year, maybe more than a million year, which is built on, is drastically depleted in the last 100 years. And this is not something good. This is something disastrous. And this is something going to affect the humanity in a bad level. So what I'm saying, one more thing regarding epigenetics and health. Environment, food, and behavior of pregnant women can change the baby's epigenetics, and it can last lifelong to the child. So our genetics is always interacting with the external and internal environment. It is not a static thing at all. A mother in distress will give birth to a baby with many problems which he is going to face in the future, because many of his genes are not properly regulated during the intrauterine life. Regulation of genes started from the day one itself. From the first cell, second cell, third cell, fourth cell, regulation is their own. And there is a normal regulatory mechanism, and which can be hindered, which can be suppressed, and which may be go out of hand when the mother's mental and physical environment is not good. And these all are proven scientific facts I am just explaining to you. So where the problem lies? The problem never lies with an individual doctors like us or an individual doctors in any system of medicine. The problem lies with the frame of science, frame of the science. The frame of the today's modern medicine is based on Cartesian model of mind and body parallelism and Newtonian model of objectivity and predictability. These two are the fundamental basis of conventional modern medicine. This is the frame of science in which everybody is operating. When the frame is wrong, action goes wrong. So these fault lines leads to a scientific illusion. Scientific illusion is microorganism is the basic cause of infection. Microorganism is only one factor of infection. It is not the basic cause of infection. Definitely it can influence. It is an important factor with a multiple variable parameters of influence. And immunogenetic modulation of the individual has to be given more importance than the infectious agent itself. So here what we demand is a change in the frame of concept of science, of medicine. That is, change your focus from microorganism to the immunogenetic modulation of the individual. Then it becomes individualistic. Killing bacteria can be easy and it can be a statistical business. This much of amount of antibiotics can kill this bacteria. You can give the antibiotics and kill the bacteria. How long are we going to do that? So this situation is the basis in which we are still having a virus-based approach in COVID-19. That is why when homeopaths say we can improve the immunity and treat the diseases, people don't agree, because people still believe treatment is virus or bacteria focused, not on human being focused. This is a frame of mind, frame of science. And along with this, the medical industry is completely controlled not by a single doctor, but it is completely controlled by the crony capitalist or vulture capitalist and scientific nepotism. Scientific nepotism is something as bad as religious extremism. Both are equally dangerous because both can harm the humanity as a whole. So there what we are seeing is the organizations like WHO, which is there to protect the human life and improve the humanity, has rejected all other possibilities and focused exclusively on the bacteria-based, virus-based, germ-based theories. It was the greatest mistake which world will realize in the years to come. And not only that, it is tampering with the freedom of choice of individual human beings. Yesterday, there was an important article, important statement by the President of German Republic, Angela Merkel. She is slowly demitting her office after 18 years of service to Germany as a president. She said one thing very, very important. It was a political statement. She says the tech companies like Google, Facebook, and Microsoft, they become so big and they don't even bother about the individual governments and individual decision makers of nations. Nations become unimportant in front of them. So she says regulation has to be placed. Therefore, you keep them in their place. They don't allow them to interfere in public policies. And EU, the European Union, is framing new laws and regulations very stringent to control these multinational giants. They are controlling the human beings now. But nobody still talked about the health industry. The health industry, which is much more bigger than these tech industries. Many of the major invisible pharma industries and their back end are trillion and trillion dollars. And they don't even bother about the nations or national leaders or anybody. And here, this is a very serious problem which is going to happen. Every human being is going to lose their individual right and freedom of choice. And this is undemocratic, it's against the human rights. And nations are deprived of their sovereignty, and political leadership are coerced to follow the line of capitalist dictatorship in medicine. This is what exactly we are seeing now. And this is going to influence each and everybody's life in a shorter time. Therefore, my conclusion is the whole world order today in medicine or in economics or in politics or in social media is misguided. Science of medicine is completely under the illusion of Cartesian and Newtonian models, which is outdated. The same model is applied in COVID-19. That is why COVID-19 as a virus infection still remaining as a serious problem. Otherwise, it would have been abated by now. And the chronic capitalists control the human health. And the chronic capitalist control of human health is perilous to humanity. Conventional medical science attaining the status of a faith system is still more dangerous. Not allowing alternate thoughts to live and survive is the worst form of fundamentalism which is practiced in any field. Forcefully suppressing the alternative thoughts in human health is disastrous, not only for the current generation, but definitely for the future generation. But I am very hopeful, I am an optimistic person, so basically what I feel is there is a possibility of building a new world order with an advanced civilization better than what we are today after the COVID-19 crisis, because COVID-19 crisis is going to teach humanity many things which we never ever thought of in the last many centuries. And here one thing we demand is health should be a personal choice and freedom. It should not be, my mind and body should not be under the control of anybody in this world. If we lose that freedom, we are finished as human beings. We have the freedom to eat what we want. We have the freedom to believe what we want. We have the freedom to remain, take what medicine we want. If that freedom is lost, then better not to say anything about democracy or freedom of choice or anything like that. My conclusion is that homeopathy is an advanced medicine for the future. It is an advanced nanopharmacology and it acts on gene regulation. This is something we have to tell everywhere, and this will remove the scientific confusion about homeopathy. Enough work is done by the researchers around the world to support, but our common public, our communities are till today not able to understand. So COVID-19 marks a civilizational shift in social, political, economical, and scientific, as well as in medical systems. So we are going to brace for a new reality. And the disintegration of current model of health is an imminent reality which I am seeing. Disintegration of current model of health. And a new health model has to arrive. And this new health model, we should be supportive to human immune system, improving the human immune status rather than suppressing the immune system. And suppressing the immune system is the worst thing we can do for a human race in the longer run. So my dear friends, thank you so much for this great opportunity, and we are optimistic, we are hopeful that the world is changing, and the pandemic which we are facing is a lifetime experience, and this we will overcome because humanity has always optimism and the vigor to overcome the crisis, and we will overcome the crisis and we will achieve better. And the science also has to change. Science, if it doesn't change, is going to harm our human life and our immune system. We are living with such a complex genetic system. We are not realizing that. And we wanted to make money out of that. We are making industry out of immune system. Extremely bad thing is happening in that. And this has to change. And we should be clear about what is happening in this world and how we can go forward. Maybe our isolated words may not count now, but it is going to count when the reality bites and the people experience the bitter truths in the years to come. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for this wonderful time.
It was a great session, Dr. Rajendran sir, and definitely we are also in hope. Definitely, homeopathy has to take the science of nanoscience and it should go to the gene and getting a correction in a gene. That is the most modern medicine in the world. So we are in also the same thought, and we congratulate and we appreciate all your effort in going in particular manner and moving and finding out this science and revealing the science to the world. And definitely we are sure one day that that definitely will give you the success, and we are very sure on that. And we may go to our questions. There are participants asking questions, so we request you to continue little more time. I am just first I am going to Paul Muttatukunnel. Dr. Paul.
Good evening to all of you. Good evening to Dr. Rajendran. Thank you very much for this insightful speech and presentations. So we need many years to discuss all these things together. So it's very interesting. So what I understand is that there is no change in the substance when we go to the nanoparticles. For example, sodium carbonate remains as sodium carbonate when we go to the 30 CO, 200 CO, 10 etc. Or is there any change in this substance?
No, that is something like when you take the compounds, for example, if you take calcium carbonate, you may not find calcium carbonate when you go to the nanoscale. It disintegrates into calcium as well as the carbonate to different entities, because when they are coming together, they remain united. And we don't know much about that, because when you analyze a particle, we find it's a specific amount of, for example, if you say sodium chloride, we find an amount of sodium and an amount of chloride. And whether they remain as a single compound or they segregate and remain as a single unit, we are not very sure about. Whereas in metals, we are very clear. In the metals, we are finding the particles of each element very separate.
Okay, thank you. And we know that the X-ray is a very good medicine in homeopathy, and most of us use X-ray. How can we find these nanoparticles in X-ray?
That is a very good question, because in my book, Ray of Civilization, the nanodynamics, I studied X-ray just out of curiosity, because I never expected anything in X-ray. But at the same time, when I examined X-ray 200 electron microscope, I think I studied 2 or 3 potencies. Very surprisingly, I could find carbon nanoparticles in the X-ray, probably because I studied how the X-ray is prepared. 100 or 1,000 rads of X-ray is exposed. And if you are interested, I can just show you these pictures of X-ray. X-ray 200C. This is X-ray 200C. You can see the picture, and you can find X-ray 200C has particles of carbon in that. And I don't know how, maybe 1,000 rads of X-ray is irradiated into a definite sugar of milk, and this sugar of milk is potentized. So when the X-ray is irradiated, these carbon particles might be burned internally, or some chemical changes might be happening. And when you potentize and when you go higher and higher dilutions in succussion also, particles are remaining. And actually I wanted to do for radium bromide and other drugs. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that. Otherwise, I would know explain more better. So we don't have a definite answer why and how. We are just presenting our observation in front for others to explore more into that. And that's what science demands always. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Ismail said want to tell something. Dr. Ismail
said. All are intoxicated now due to the heavy speech, you know. Everyone knows that we are believing the nanoparticles, but how we find out, how we take out from the medicine, that the mechanism is very relevant. So Dr. Rajendran was given very elaborate speech, elaborate theory and practical of this one, takes out the molecules of the homeopathic medicines from the medical itself. So it is a wonderful theory, and Dr. Sudhabas was given very much inspired this thing. And after the inspiration of the Sudhabas, Rajendran also taken out. And after Rajendran, some juniors also taken this opportunity to prove this particle nano theory. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And Dr. Hubert, you can ask questions.
Thank you. Amazing presentation, sir. Very much thankful to you. So I want to know if there is more dilution we are preparing one after another potentization. If there the nanoparticles are numbers, then particles numbers are it increases in each and every potency.
Yes.
Very interesting.
We found out.
Yeah, this is a very, very interesting question, because let me very
Yeah.
honest about what I observed. I expected that when the potency goes up, the particle number and size has to come down. That is what common sense says every time. But it acted many times against the common sense. When you go to higher and higher dilutions, particles became more stable and particles became more subtle. And number of particles sometimes I have find increased. I don't know the exact reason for that. And there must be something paradoxical happening when you go to nanoscale. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I am very open to what I found, and I have explained also, this is what I found. And maybe that is against our conventional thought, but doesn't mean conventional thoughts are always correct also.
Number two question, I want to ask one more question. If the vehicles are changing or the material, we are using the material which is changing.
What, sir?
If the vehicle are changing or the drug substance which is changing, its nature.
Vehicles are never changing. Vehicles remaining is the same, but only changes happening is the size, shape, morphology, and configuration of the particles which we are finding.
One more question, sir. There are one glass method and many glass method. You might have heard that. One bottle method in potentization and many bottle methods in pharmacy. What is the, we don't know what is happening there.
I have studied from mostly. I studied mostly from Wilmer Schaube.
Now we are speaking about the principal nano theory. Only particles.
Different companies, and what I found is most of the companies are using, after 30 or 200 C onwards, they are using single glass method. Single glass method, there is only one or two companies making this potentizer, that is Switzerland-based companies, and everybody in the world is using the same machines for their, and they go up to CM potency in the same bottle, but the same bottle means they have a very, did you see that any time in a pharmacy how it is working?
No.
You have to see that, then this question will not come.
Okay.
They have a very clear method. So one potency is it's a computerized method where a specific bottle is being used for trituration, and once the trituration is over, 99% of the particle will be sucked out, and only 1% will remain inside, and the vehicle will be added again.
Okay. Now the raised hand is, I don't know the name, Lenovo.
Okay, I'm Dr. Vishnu from Calicut.
Yeah, please.
So
No.
let me, at the outset, I would like to congratulate Dr. E S Rajendran for his excellent presentation. I would recollect another thing that we had at length discussed his personalized nanomedicine for at least 3 days for our PG Journal Club. I think that one of the PG has consulted you also, and you gave the many informations regarding this personalized nanomedicine, and it was a thought-provoking Journal Club discussion which has had gone for at least 3 days. I have 2 questions to ask. Say, could you able to mention something regarding why that in the proving that there are expressions of certain things in one person and certain things in another person? Could you able to make it in the language of epigenetics?
Yeah, that is very simple because we have a set of genes which are common to everybody, but there are many genes which are individualistic, highly different. They are divergent. So when we take a medicine, every individual will not produce exactly same symptoms because of genetic variation. Some of the symptoms may vary, some of the symptoms may be common. And that is what we experience every time in drug dosing. And that goes as per the current knowledge of genetics itself. It never contradicts what we study in genetics. It is highly possible that there can be variation in the symptomatology of the same drug when you prove in different individuals. But one thing we should know that I have seen that at least 80% of symptoms remain common and 20% of symptoms roughly remain different from individual to individual. That is justifiable.
Whether that there is any bearing bearing with that dormancy of that genes and domination of genes in expressing the symptoms.
Because the gene regulation is different in different individuals, and the genes which are on and off are also not same and equal in every individual. It is highly individualistic, and the probability of influencing same gene of different people, when the genes are switched on or switched off, the activities will be entirely different. This is when you go deeper into that, it is highly complex actually.
Okay. The second question is that nowadays everybody is after this specific medication for each and everything, and everybody is want to have the medicines for this what's called the so-called what's called a nomenclature of the diseases, and we also have that a lot of applause getting for those also, but I think that. The thing is that the expressions of this nomenclature for the disease is something in contradict with our what's called theory and what is being expressed in this your nanomedicine. Is it so?
Nanomedicine, you mean homeopathy or you mean the conventional medicine nanomedicine concept?
No. Homeopathy. That the specificity is being discussed in modern homeopaths. Nowadays that
it never contradicts actually, because when you look at the drug action in human beings, when you look at a single medicine for every disease, that's the easiest way. Everybody wanted the easiest way, and it didn't start today. It was there from the beginning with the Hanuman itself. That time itself, people were asking about specific for specific disease. But in homeopathy, we don't have too many specifics. And there are medicines which are polycrust, which have such a wider action, act almost like specific in allergy conditions. Many people give arsenic often and they act, but not every time, but majority of time. So such attempts are always there. And we don't know, a day will come where we will be able to find a specific drug for a specific individual, but that will not be in the same line. If you have the genetic coding of every individual in your hand, and what I perceive is, I am telling you, Dr. Vishnu, very sincerely, this question will vanish the day we introduce artificial intelligence into the gene analysis, and where the gene analysis is completely done in a short time, and which genes are in trouble is identified, and which drug is capable of altering that error or correction. If you can identify at that level, that is what we are always trying to do in the finest level, but we are not reaching that level. If you are able to reach that level in an artificial intelligence and computerized system in the years to come, then I am really afraid that there is no need of doctors in this world, and it can be easily cured without the presence of doctors. I think that may be a better world for human beings.
So only engineers and robot will be there.
No, even engineers are not needed. Even engineers are not needed for.
Yeah.
One day it will come. One day it will come like that.
Yeah, one day it will come. Because nobody expected a mobile phone in our hand 30 years back. Now we all have a mobile phone. So things may change. Technology can change everything. That is one thing.
Mr. Parit Bhavakan, you can ask your question.
Dr. Rajendran, sir, good evening.
Good evening.
Am I audible?
Yeah, very much, please.
You have made a high-profile academic presentation on various perceptions and dimensions of homeopathy. Very appreciative. Your presentation reinforced my understanding that I am a postgraduate in science, that knowledge has no boundaries. That's what you have said. So I am able to learn and unlearn certain dimensions and perceptions about homeopathy. Certain vested interests have been trying to create a dystopian images about the homeopathy. And as you have pointed out, health has become an economic commodity now. Gene regulatory mechanism and epigenic modification, very scientific concepts which has enabled the homeopaths to treat cancer, diabetes, etc. to a curative level. Now, my question is whether these gene regulatory mechanism and epigenetic modification concepts can be utilized to prove or disprove the efficacy and safety of the vaccine, and thereby we'll get a clear picture about the vaccine. That's what I want to know about it.
No, that is something which vaccine, basically, the vaccine concept itself is inducing antigen into the body and thereby stimulating the immune system to create antibodies in advance. This is a fundamental basis of vaccination, and this is what exactly vaccines are supposed to do. But when you go to the level of RNA or mRNA level, or to that extent in the genetic level, and to manipulate at that level, I don't know, because this is a very recent event and it happened only last 8 or 9 months. Before that, nobody attempted and nobody has any idea about that. And I'm really sincerely worried that we are playing with something which we have little knowledge, and that can produce sometimes immense harm. We don't know. It is something which we are not sure about. And even the scientists, they work there regarding all these vaccines are also not clearly answering questions, because the questions are not easy to answer, because immunity and immunogenetics modulations are something far beyond the total understanding. We may know a little bit here and there, but beyond that we don't know, because the gene regulatory mechanism, which is interconnected from one gene to another gene, it is not an isolated mechanism. It is something more complex than our cerebral cortex, which is having 14 layers. And in these 14 layers, there are 10 billion neurons. And these 10 billion neurons are interconnected. And that is what a human brain and human consciousness work. There, the first layer integrates with the 14th layer and 12th layer, and every neuronal axons are connected each other. And this integration, nobody has any idea. No scientist, no neurologist, nobody has any idea how it is, how about it is working. And I can tell you the intricacies of gene regulation is much more complex than what we are seeing in our cerebral cortex and the multitude of layers. So I am not capable of answering your question because we don't know anything about the problem itself. Thank you so much.
I have one more question, please, sir. As you mentioned, the gene regulatory mechanism and epigenic modification, these concepts have a very wide scope, no doubt about that. Why we are not giving due importance to study these aspects? Why? Have you ever thought about that? Please.
When we look at the academics in homeopathy around the world, I'm really happy about at least we reached at this point, because when the COVID problem comes, the American government, the US government sanctioned $3 billion for 2 companies to do research, $3 billion. And when we are looking for 100,000 rupees for a research, you will not get it, because people say, why to waste the money for such simple and silly things? So that's the way world works. So we have to establish ourselves. Then then people come behind you. Till that time, you are an outsider. You are in the periphery, and you are outcast at some moment. So that is a reality where we should know that our own effort is something which is very important. And academics will come to research level when the academics has grown to a mature level. Our academics are just reaching that level. I don't believe even reached to that level, reaching to that level. But what we achieved in the last 20, 30 years is amazing. I have no doubt about that. With all negative social backing, our people with immense passion, and sometimes getting extraordinary outcome in the patient treatment, which makes us confident about what we are doing. And we are standing on that confidence and building an empire of reality of science. And that is going to conquer the world. And every new science and every new ideology not started with billion people. It started with hardly few people, and these ideas will grow and become bigger. Thank you so much.
Rajan sir, I'm Yahya.
Yeah. How are you?
Sir, which was an excellent presentation, and so my question is, so again you have dragged and dropped my mind to the materialistic concept, because our medicine is capable of penetrating the blood-brain barrier, the cytoplasm, the nucleus, everything. So you have explained it in a very excellent way. So I have my doubt how it penetrates our mind.
Oh, that's really a very enlightening.
How the emotions gets neutralized, how our emotions get.
Yeah. Your question is something very interesting and a very deep question. What I think is a part of our mind is living in the genes, because when you look at schizophrenic patients or depressive patients or a variety of psychiatric patients, nowadays we know that specific genes are altered. So a part of our mental makeup is coming out from genetics. So that area, especially our mind related to instincts and impulses and emotions, are closely related to our genetic system. And when we look like that, when we give homeopathic medicines, we are curing many emotional disturbances, many of disturbances of memories or intellect, or even many other mental states we are curing in the patient. Even I have seen in one of my patients, he was extremely miserly, which he never told me and his wife never told me, but after giving lycopodium for him for some constitutional treatment for diabetes, in fact, after 1 month, his wife came and in fact cried in front of me and said, "What did you give him? He became so liberal. In first time in our life, he gave a lot of money and we purchased anything we are asking. I think you did some magic." Then I asked what happened. Then she said he was such a conjuice in the world, even worried about spending. He is immensely rich guy. Even 5 rupees we had to beg and cry every time. But after he came and met you and took your medicine, he became a different man. So medicines in constitutional level can alter many things.
So you're open your account.
So part of our mental functions are, especially instinctual functions, are based on genetics. And mind may have different layers which we are not exploring in depth in different levels, but at least definitely a part of our basic mind and its structure lies on our genetic system. There is no doubt about it.
Thank you. And
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Danesh, Dr. Yahya, sorry, we may be a little fast in winding up.
Yes, please proceed.
Dr. Danesh.
Good evening, all. Good evening, Rajendra sir, too. It's a very good presentation, sir. It was a wonderful presentation, and you have covered almost all part of homeopathy from the very beginning to end. You have covered everything and the importance of nano study. But nowadays, even the new world, particularly the modern world, criticizing us as that we are the pseudoscience people and we have no option in the existence, but
you have you have come in as a medicine in it by nanotechnology. So why can't you post all this so that the so-called nonsense written in the Wikipedia can be changed? And it is our duty to put all this thing in the, we need to paste all this thing in the Wikipedia and everywhere. Then only people will appreciate it. And to my question to you is that what motivates you to do all this kind of research, and how far you reach? Whether I think you have reached the destination, but what is your next plan? Whether you have any other destination? I think you can move forward and put all this thing into the into record that homeopathy is a science for the next generation. So please come up with your comments, sir. I'm very delighted to see you here, and it was a very nice presentation. We are all delighted, and it is one of the best presentation throughout this 150th celebration day. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful support to us.
Regarding to the Wikipedia and the people who criticize homeopathy, fundamentally what I suggest is we cannot go and change others. Only thing we can change ourselves. So if we change ourselves, homeopaths change ourselves to believe in the science of homeopathy in a deeper way, everything will change. If we go behind them and trying to change,
exactly,
it's going to change. So don't bother about the people who are skeptics and who are immeasurable people who are they say we are pseudoscientists because they don't know what is science. Science is not somebody's father's property or somebody's bank account or
everything is approach, no?
It is everybody's.
Approach about your theory, no?
So science is changing. Science is
then
changing.
There's no need of any other questions.
Yesterday's science or
yeah.
science is going to be different.
And those who are having any doubt, you just purchase his book and go through the details. You will get a clear picture. Such a way he explains.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Rajendran was given a very good, excellent presentation. Thank you from my heart. But I like to say to the CCRH and everyone to this fundamental research to improve, not to the people who are treated again and again. This fundamental part of the research must be encouraged, like that of Rajendran's method. And the fundamental research, we must have to give more emphasis. That I want to tell to the authorities, mainly for the CCRH, they must have to go on that. Of course, they are encouraging, but they must have to give a separate approach and support for such kind of fundamental research. Thank you very much for everyone. Because there is no time, I am not going to ask. So many people are asked the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Let me just conclude in one word. Fundamental research is something which is very important to give a firm basis for our fraternity and medicine. At the same time, clinical research is equally important. And the last week, the day before yesterday, 26th, we have initiated such a project, first time in history. The GHF Australia, Global Homeopathic Foundation Australia, under the aegis of Dr. Kusef and Dr. Sam, has initiated with the collaboration with the GHF India, a clinical research collaborating 8 homeopathic medical colleges in India. It's a beginning. It's a multi-centric, multinational research project of clinical research in homeopathy. And we inaugurated it in day before yesterday. And any doctor can collaborate later. More and more diseases are going to be studied in the clinical studies. And it doesn't need so much of effort or anything. You choose one patient of a disease, then you study according to a protocol and give the report. And homeopaths together in the world start working. The clinical knowledge of homeopathy and scientific side of homeopathy can be improved.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Rajendran. It was a very nice session for us, and it is a very nice learning. And what you told is correct. The 2 people only run for the victory, and definitely the world will come over there. And we are very sure the homeopathy is also very near to the Nobel Prize in the world for science. So we have to find out, and a lot of things need to be found out. And it is very late today, but even then all the participants are very eagerly asking questions. There are a lot of questions in chat box, but I am very sorry to read all those things. And we may be winding up. I request you, Dr. Abdul Latif, to give vote of thanks for this session. Dr.
Very happy about that.
Really, once again, I am very happy to say Dr. Rajendran was a best student of mine along with Dr. Ismail Set. And now it is very, very interesting and appreciating to be best honored to say that you are not at all a student, but a teacher, and teacher for all the teachers and the scientists and a script writer and everything what you can, but we have very fond of. And it is our privilege to say vote of thanks, and with all the others, I have to say, on behalf of them, I have to say vote of thanks and your sincere effort to come over here on this platform to enrich us. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, one and everyone on this forum. And we are closing today, and there is no chat session today. It's already too late. And good night to everyone.